She lost her job for helping him, but he was an undercover millionaire who gave her love. The pink slip was still warm in Rebecca's hands when she realized the man she just risked everything to help wasn't who he said he was. "You're fired." Mr. Davidson's words were still ringing in her ears. 3 years of perfect attendance at the hotel, 3 years of working double shifts to pay for Emma's daycare, and it was over because she'd helped a guest who wasn't supposed to be helped. Before we dive into this incredible story, I'd love to know where you're watching from and what time it is over there. Drop it in the comments below. It always amazes me how far these stories travel, from the US to Canada, the UK, Africa, and beyond. And while you're here, don't forget to hit subscribe and give this video a like so you won't miss the next story. Now let's get started. She looked down at the man lying on the marble floor of the hotel lobby, blood trickling from his forehead where the attackers had hit him. His expensive suit was torn, his face bruised, but his eyes. God, his eyes were the most beautiful thing she'd ever seen. "Are you okay?" she whispered, kneeling beside him even though she knew the security cameras were watching. Even though she knew Mr. Davidson was probably already writing up her termination papers. The man tried to sit up, wincing. "You shouldn't have done that," he said softly. "You shouldn't have helped me. What was I supposed to do? Let them kill you?" That's what it had looked like. 3 men in dark suits had cornered this stranger in the lobby, demanding something about money and deadlines and consequences. When they started hitting him, Rebecca had done the only thing she could do. She'd screamed for help and thrown herself between them and him. The attackers had run when hotel security finally showed up, but the damage was done. Mr. Davidson said she'd interfered with hotel business and created a liability situation. What he really meant was that she was just a housekeeper who should have minded her own business. "What's your name?" the man asked, his voice rough but gentle. "Rebecca. Rebecca Patterson." She helped him sit up against the wall, her hands shaking. "And I just lost my job for helping you, so I hope you're worth it." He looked at her like she just said something that broke his heart. "Rebecca, don't. Whatever you're about to say, just don't. I've got a 3-year-old daughter and no job and about $50 to my name. I don't need your pity on top of everything else." But he wasn't looking at her with pity. He was looking at her like she was something precious, something worth protecting. "My name is James," he said quietly. "James Foster. And Rebecca, I need to tell you something that's going to change everything." She was gathering up her cleaning supplies, trying not to cry in front of him. "Look, James, I'm sure you're a nice guy, but I've got to figure out how to tell my daughter that mommy lost another job because she can't keep her mouth shut." "Rebecca, wait." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out something that made her stop breathing. A business card. Heavy, expensive looking. But it wasn't the card that made her world tilt. It was the name on it. James Foster. Chief Executive Officer. Foster Industries. She'd heard that name before. Everyone in the city had heard that name. Foster Industries owned half the buildings downtown, including the hotel she'd just been fired from. "You're him," she whispered. "You're the Foster Industries guy." "I am." His voice was so quiet she almost couldn't hear it. "And Rebecca, those men who were attacking me? They weren't random attackers. They work for someone who's been trying to destroy my company for months. Someone who would kill to get what they want." The lobby was spinning around her. The billionaire. She'd just saved the life of an actual billionaire, and now she was unemployed because of it. "Why were you here? In the lobby of your own hotel?" James's face went dark. "Because someone I trusted sold me out. Someone close to me told those men exactly where to find me. And if you hadn't stepped in when you did..." He touched the cut on his forehead. "I'd probably be dead right now." Rebecca stared at him, at this man who could buy and sell her entire life without thinking twice about it. This man who was looking at her like she was the most important person in the world. "I don't understand any of this," she said. "You don't have to understand it. All you have to know is that you saved my life today, And I'm not the kind of man who forgets a debt like that. He stood up slowly, straightening his torn jacket. Even beaten up and bloody, he moved like someone who owned everything he touched. Rebecca Patterson, he said, and the way he said her name made her stomach flip. Would you have dinner with me tonight? She almost laughed. Dinner? I just got fired. I can't afford dinner. I'm asking you to have dinner with me. As my guest. Why? He looked at her for a long moment, and she saw something in his eyes that made her heart race. Something that looked almost like longing. Because in the last 5 minutes, you've shown me more courage and kindness than I've seen in my entire life. And because... He paused, like he was about to say something that scared him. Because I have a feeling that meeting you is going to change everything. Rebecca looked down at the pink slip in her hands, then back at this man who was offering her something she couldn't quite understand yet. She had no job, no prospects, and no reason to trust a billionaire who just turned her life upside down. But something about the way he was looking at her made her want to say yes anyway. Have you ever had a moment where helping someone completely changed your life? Sometimes the biggest risks lead to the most beautiful surprises. Share in the comments about a time when doing the right thing opened doors you never expected. Rebecca's apartment smelled like burnt toast and broken dreams. She sat at her tiny kitchen table, staring at the business card James Foster had pressed into her hand before she'd practically run out of the hotel lobby. Foster Industries. She'd Googled it on her phone while Emma ate cereal for dinner. $23 billion. That's what the internet said James Foster was worth. $23 billion, and she couldn't even afford to fix the leak under her kitchen sink. Mama, why do you look sad? Emma asked, chocolate milk mustache making her look even younger than 3. I'm not sad, baby. Just thinking. But she was sad. And scared. And confused as hell about why a man who could buy entire countries had asked her to dinner like they were normal people who might actually have something in common. The business card felt heavy in her fingers. Too heavy. Like it was made of something more expensive than paper. Her phone buzzed. A known number. Hello. Rebecca? It's James. James Foster. Her heart did something weird in her chest. Fluttery and nervous and warm all at the same time. How did you get my number? I may have asked my assistant to look it up. I hope that's not too forward. Too forward? The man owned half the city and he was worried about being forward? It's fine, she said, even though it wasn't really fine. Rich people finding out personal information about her made her uncomfortable. But his voice was so gentle, so uncertain, like he was nervous about calling her. I wanted to make sure you were okay. After what happened today. I'm fine. Just unemployed. She tried to make it sound like a joke, but it came out bitter instead. Rebecca, about your job. Please. I don't want your pity money or your guilt job or whatever you're about to offer. I'll figure it out on my own. There was silence on the other end. Long enough that she wondered if he'd hung up. You're proud, he said finally. I'm realistic. Men like you don't help women like me without wanting something in return. What if I told you that you're wrong about that? Then I'd say you're either lying or you're not like other rich guys I've met. I'm not like other rich guys you've met. Something in his voice made her believe him, which was stupid because she'd learned a long time ago not to trust promises from men who had everything while she had nothing. Rebecca, I meant what I said about dinner. No strings, no expectations. Just, I'd like to get to know you better. Why? Because you threw yourself between me and 3 armed men without thinking twice about it. Because you lost your job protecting someone you didn't even know. Because... His voice got quieter. Because I can't stop thinking about you. Her heart did that fluttery thing again. Dangerous territory. I have a daughter, she said. I can't just go out to dinner like some college girl. Bring her. That stopped her cold. What? Bring Emma. We can go somewhere kid-friendly. Make it a family dinner instead of a date. Family dinner. When was the last time someone had used the word family about her and Emma. When was the last time a man had wanted to include her daughter instead of treating her like an inconvenience? You don't even know Emma. Then I'd like to meet her. If that's okay with you. Rebecca looked over at Emma, who was now wearing more cereal than she'd eaten, singing some songs she'd learned at daycare. Her beautiful, perfect, innocent daughter who deserved so much better than their tiny apartment and cereal dinners and a mama who couldn't keep a job. James, can I ask you something? Of course. Why were you really at the hotel today? I mean, you own the place. You could have met whoever you were meeting anywhere. The silence stretched out again. When he finally spoke, his voice was different. Careful. I was meeting someone I thought I could trust. Someone who's been feeding information about my company to people who want to destroy it. I thought if we met somewhere public, somewhere I owned, I'd be safe. But you weren't. No. Turns out the person I thought I could trust set me up. Those men were there to kill me, Rebecca. And they would have, if you hadn't stepped in. The weight of that hit her. She'd saved his life. Actually saved someone's life. Who's trying to kill you? That's complicated. There are people who think my company has too much power. People who believe that much money in one person's hands is dangerous. Is it? Dangerous, I mean. He was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. Sometimes, he said finally, sometimes having this much money means making choices that hurt people. Sometimes it means people you care about become targets. Is that why you don't want me to feel guilty about the job thing? Because you're used to people getting hurt because of you? Rebecca, I've never felt guilty about a business decision in my life. But watching you get fired for saving me, that kept me awake all night. She could hear Emma in the living room now, talking to her stuffed animals, making up stories where the princess always got rescued and everyone lived happily ever after. What happened to your family? Rebecca asked. Wife, kids, whatever? I don't have a family. Everyone has somebody. I had a fiancé once. 3 years ago. She loved the money more than she loved me. When she figured out that being with me meant living with bodyguards and security cameras and people wanting to hurt you just because you're close to me, she decided it wasn't worth it. Rebecca closed her eyes. She was starting to understand why he'd looked at her like she was something precious. When you're that rich, how do you know if people care about you or just your money? James? Yeah. If I say yes to dinner, this isn't me saying yes to anything else. I'm not looking for a sugar daddy or a way out of my problems. I'm just curious about you. Curious is good. I can work with curious. She could hear him smiling through the phone, and it made her smile too. Dinner. But somewhere Emma can get chicken nuggets, because she won't eat anything else. I know a place. Of course he did. Rich people always knew a place. But as Rebecca hung up the phone and looked around her tiny apartment with its broken sink and stained carpet, she realized something that scared her more than being unemployed. For the first time in 3 years, she was looking forward to something. Have you ever met someone who seemed too good to be true? Sometimes the people who change our lives show up when we least expect them. Share in the comments about taking chances on people who seem out of your league. The restaurant James picked wasn't what Rebecca expected. No fancy tablecloths or waiters in bow ties. Just a family place with red booths and crayons on every table. The kind of place where kids could be loud and nobody cared. Emma was in heaven, coloring a picture of a dinosaur while she waited for her chicken nuggets. James sat across from them, looking completely out of place in his expensive suit but somehow fitting in anyway. So you really own hotels? Emma asked, not looking up from her coloring. I do. Lots of them. Do you get to sleep in a different bed every night? James laughed, and the sound made Rebecca's chest feel warm. I could, but I usually sleep in the same bed. It's more comfortable that way. Mama says we might have to move again soon. But I like our bed. It's squishy. Rebecca felt her cheeks burn. Trust Emma to announce their housing problems to a billionaire. Moving can be an adventure, James said gently. Sometimes new places turn out to be even better than the old ones. That's what Mama says, but I think she's just trying to make me feel better. Out of the mouths of babes. Rebecca was definitely just trying to make her feel better. The waitress brought their food, and for a few minutes they ate in comfortable silence. Emma was telling James about her stuffed animals, and he was listening like it was the most important conversation he'd ever had. Rebecca was starting to relax when her phone rang. Unknown number again. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Rebecca Patterson? Yes. This is Detective Maria Santos with the police department. I need to speak with you about the incident at the Grand Hotel this afternoon. Rebecca's stomach dropped. What about it? Ma'am, we need you to come down to the station. There are some questions about your involvement with the assault. My involvement? I didn't assault anyone. I helped someone who was being attacked. Ma'am, I'd rather discuss this in person. How soon can you be here? Rebecca looked at James, who was watching her with growing concern. Emma was still coloring, oblivious to the fear creeping up Rebecca's spine. I have my daughter with me. Can this wait until tomorrow? I'm afraid it can't. The victim has filed charges, and we need your statement tonight. The victim? You mean the men who were attacking? Ma'am, I really need you to come in. And Miss Patterson? You might want to bring a lawyer. The line went dead. Rebecca stared at her phone, her heart pounding so hard she could barely breathe. Rebecca? What's wrong? James reached across the table and touched her hand. The police. They want me to come in for questioning. Something about charges being filed. James's face went dark. What kind of charges? I don't know. The detective said the victim filed charges, but that doesn't make sense. You're the victim. Rebecca, listen to me very carefully. Don't go to the police station. Not tonight. What? Why? Because this is exactly what I was afraid would happen. The people who tried to kill me today, they're not going to just give up. They're going to try to discredit anyone who can identify them. Emma looked up from her coloring. Mama, why do you look scared? I'm not scared, baby. Just tired. But she was scared. Terrified, actually. She'd never dealt with police before, never been accused of anything. What if they arrested her? What would happen to Emma? James, I have to go. If they want to question me, they don't want to question you. They want to arrest you. Rebecca, think about it. You interfered with what they're going to claim was a legitimate business transaction. You assaulted 3 men who were just trying to collect a debt. That's not what happened. I know that. You know that. But those 3 men are going to tell a very different story. And without proof. Rebecca felt sick. They're going to say I attacked them. They're going to say whatever they need to say to make sure you can't testify about what you saw. But you can tell them the truth. You can explain what really happened. James looked down at his hands. Rebecca, there's something I haven't told you. Something about why those men were really there. The fear in his voice made her stomach twist. What? They weren't just trying to kill me. They were trying to get information about a deal I'm working on. A deal that could put some very powerful people in prison. What kind of deal? The kind that makes billionaires disappear if they know too much. Rebecca stared at him. This was insane. This morning she was worried about making rent, and now she was sitting in a family restaurant talking about murder and corruption like it was normal. James, what are you involved in? Nothing illegal. But the people I'm about to expose, they have connections everywhere. Police, judges, politicians. If they want you arrested, you'll be arrested. If they want evidence to disappear, it disappears. So what am I supposed to do? Come with me. What? Tonight. Right now. Pack whatever you and Emma need and come with me. I have a place where you'll be safe while we figure this out. Rebecca looked at her daughter, who was now drawing hearts around her dinosaur, completely unaware that her world was about to explode. I can't just disappear with you. I don't even know you. You know enough. You know I'd rather die than let anything happen to you or Emma. How can you say that? We just met. James was quiet for a moment, staring at her like he was trying to memorize her face. Because this afternoon, when those men had guns pointed at me, all I could think about was that I was going to die alone. No family, no one to miss me except my board of directors. And then you stepped in front of those guns without thinking twice, and I realized. What? I realized I'd been waiting my whole life for someone brave enough to fight for me. Rebecca felt tears burning behind her eyes. This was too much. Too fast. Too complicated. But when she looked at Emma, still coloring peacefully, she realized she didn't have a choice. If the police wanted to arrest her, if powerful people wanted to hurt her for helping James, then Emma wasn't safe here. Where would we go? Somewhere they can't find you. Somewhere Emma can be a kid while we figure out how to fix this. Rebecca's phone rang again. Same detective. Ms. Patterson, we're sending a car to pick you up. Your daughter will be placed in protective custody until this matter is resolved. The line went dead before Rebecca could respond. James was already standing up, throwing money on the table. We need to go. Now. Emma, baby, we need to leave. But I'm not done with my picture. You can finish it later. Right now we're going on an adventure. Emma's eyes lit up. Really? Where are we going? Rebecca looked at James, this man who was asking her to trust him with their lives. Somewhere safe, she said. Somewhere new. As they hurried out of the restaurant, Rebecca realized she was about to find out if fairy tales could happen to people like her, or if helping the wrong person had just destroyed everything she'd worked so hard to build. Have you ever had to make a choice between the safe path and protecting someone you care about? Sometimes doing the right thing means risking everything. Share in the comments about a time when you had to choose between safety and doing what felt right. James's house wasn't what Rebecca expected. She'd pictured some cold mansion with marble floors and chandeliers, the kind of place where you were afraid to touch anything. Instead, it was warm, comfortable, the kind of house where you could put your feet up on the coffee table without feeling guilty. This is your house? She asked as they walked through the front door. One of them. This is where I come when I want to feel normal. Emma was already exploring, running her hands along the soft couch cushions. Mama, look, they have a TV bigger than our whole wall. Emma, don't touch anything. It's okay, James said. She can touch whatever she wants. That's what it's all for. But Rebecca was too wound up to relax. Every car that drove past made her jump. Every shadow outside the window looked like someone watching them. Rebecca, you need to eat something. James appeared in the living room with a sandwich and a glass of milk. You haven't eaten since the restaurant. I'm not hungry. When's the last time you slept? She couldn't remember. Between losing her job and running from the police and trying to figure out if she could trust this man with her daughter's life, sleep seemed impossible. I keep thinking about what that detective said. About Emma being placed in protective custody. Her voice cracked. What if they take her away from me? James sat down beside her on the couch, careful to keep some space between them. They're not going to take her. How can you be so sure? Because I won't let them. You can't just wave money around and fix everything, James. Watch me. The confidence in his voice should have been reassuring, but it scared her instead. How much power did someone need to have to say something like that and mean it? Her phone buzzed. Text message from a number she didn't recognize. We know where you are. Give us what he promised you, and the girl stays safe. Rebecca's hands started shaking so bad she almost dropped the phone. James. Her voice came out as a whisper. You need to see this. He read the message and his face went white. How did they get this number? I don't know. James, what do they mean what you promised me? You didn't promise me anything. They think I told you something. Something about the deal I mentioned. What deal? You didn't tell me anything about any deal. James stood up and started pacing. That's not going to matter to them. As far as they're concerned, you're a liability now. What kind of liability? The kind that makes people disappear. Rebecca felt sick. James, what have you gotten us into? Before he could answer, Emma came running into the living room, tears streaming down her face. "Mama, there's a man outside my window. He was taking pictures of me." James was moving before Rebecca could even process what Emma had said. He grabbed his phone, hit a number, and started talking in a voice she'd never heard before. "Cold. Dangerous. We have a breach. East side of the property. How many?" He listened for a moment. 3 cars. Lock it down. Now." He hung up and turned to Rebecca. "We need to leave." "Leave? We just got here. They found us faster than I expected. My security team will handle this, but I need to get you and Emma somewhere else." Rebecca looked out the window and saw men in dark clothes moving through the trees around the house. The same kind of men who'd been attacking James at the hotel. "How many people want to kill you?" she asked. "More than I thought." Emma was crying now, scared by the tension in the room. Rebecca picked her up, trying to stay calm for her daughter's sake. "It's okay, baby. We're just going to go for another car ride." "I want to go home, Mama." "I know, sweetheart. Soon." But Rebecca was starting to wonder if they'd ever be able to go home. If there would even be a home to go back to. James's phone rang. "Yeah? What do you mean they're gone?" His face got darker. "All of them? That's not possible." He hung up and looked at Rebecca with something that might have been panic. "James, what is it?" "The men outside. They just left. All at once. No one told them to leave. They just got back in their cars and drove away." "That's good, right?" "No. That's very, very bad." "Why?" "Because it means they weren't here to hurt us. They were here to confirm we're here. Now they're going to do something else." Rebecca's phone rang. Same detective from before. "Ms. Patterson? Detective Santos. I have some good news. The charges against you have been dropped." Relief flooded through her. "Really? That's wonderful. There is one small matter, though. We need to discuss your daughter's living situation." The relief turned to ice. "What about her living situation?" "Well, given your recent unemployment and some concerns that have been raised about your judgment, we think it might be best if Emma was placed with a temporary guardian. Just until you get back on your feet." "What concerns? Who raised concerns?" "I'm not at liberty to discuss that over the phone. But if you could bring Emma down to the station, we can get this sorted out quickly." Rebecca looked at James, who was shaking his head violently. I need some time to think about this. Ms. Patterson, this isn't really optional. We have a court order. If you don't bring Emma in voluntarily, we'll have to come get her." The line went dead. Rebecca stared at her phone, feeling everything she'd feared most starting to come true. "They're going to take her," she whispered. "No, they're not. James, they have a court order. You can't fight a court order with money." "Can't I?" She looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something that scared her. The same cold determination she'd heard in his voice when he was talking to his security team. "What are you going to do?" "Whatever I have to do. James, you can't break the law. Not for us." "Rebecca, look at me." He took her hands in his, and his touch was warm and steady. "That little girl has been in my life for exactly 4 hours, and I already love her like she's my own daughter. And you? What about me? You saved my life today. Not just from those men, but from the life I was living. Alone, scared, not trusting anyone. You showed me what it feels like to have someone fight for you. James, I'm not going to let them take Emma. I'm not going to let them hurt you. Even if it means giving up everything I've built, everyone I've been." Emma had fallen asleep in Rebecca's arms, exhausted by the day's chaos. She looked so peaceful, so trusting. Like she believed the grown-ups would keep her safe no matter what. "What if we can't win?" Rebecca asked. "What if they're too powerful? Then we'll lose together. But we won't give up without a fight." Rebecca looked around the warm, comfortable house that felt more like home than anywhere she'd lived in years. At the man who was willing to risk everything for a woman and child he barely knew. At her daughter, sleeping peacefully despite the storm building around them. For the first time in her life, she wasn't facing her problems alone. For the first time in her life, someone was willing to fight for her. She just hoped it would be enough. Have you ever had someone willing to risk everything to protect you? Sometimes love shows up not in words, but in actions that change everything. Share in the comments about someone who stood up for you when it really mattered. The safe house James took them to wasn't a house at all. It was a penthouse apartment on the 40th floor of a building he owned, with bulletproof windows and security cameras everywhere. Emma thought it was the coolest thing she'd ever seen. "Look, Mama, I can see the whole world from up here." Rebecca tried to smile as she watched Emma press her face against the giant windows, but her stomach was in knots. They'd been running for 6 hours now, and she still didn't understand what they were running from. "James, I need you to tell me the truth. All of it. What's this deal you keep talking about? Why do people want to kill you? And why did helping you turn my life upside down?" James was standing by the window, looking out at the city like he was expecting someone to start shooting at them from another building. "You really want to know? I deserve to know. My daughter's life is in danger because of whatever you're mixed up in." He turned away from the window and looked at her, and she saw something in his face that made her scared to hear whatever he was about to say. 3 months ago, I found out that my company was being used to launder money for some very bad people. Human trafficking, drug smuggling, things that would make you sick if you knew the details. Rebecca felt the room spin a little. "Your company? But you're the CEO. How could you not know?" "Because the people doing it were people I trusted. My CFO, my head of security, even my assistant. They'd been skimming money and using our international hotels to move drugs and people for over 2 years. So you turned them in?" "I tried to. But when I went to the FBI, I found out that the corruption goes higher than I thought. Some of the agents, judges, politicians, they're all getting paid to look the other way." Rebecca sat down hard on the couch. "How high does it go?" "High enough that when I threatened to expose everything, they decided I needed to have an accident." The men at the hotel. The men at the hotel were just the beginning. "Rebecca, the people behind this have unlimited resources and no conscience. They've killed entire families to keep their secrets safe." She looked over at Emma, who was now making faces at her reflection in the window, completely oblivious to the conversation that was determining her future. "Why didn't you just walk away? Keep quiet and let someone else deal with it?" James was quiet for a long moment. "Because I saw pictures of some of the kids they've trafficked. Little girls Emma's age. And I realized that having all this money and power doesn't mean anything if you don't use it to protect people who can't protect themselves." Despite everything, Rebecca felt something warm spread through her chest. He could have walked away. He could have kept quiet and stayed safe and rich and comfortable. Instead, he'd risked everything to save children he'd never met. "So what's the plan? How do we stop them?" "We don't stop them. I stop them. You and Emma are going to disappear for a while until this is over." "Disappear where?" "I have a place in Montana. Completely off the grid. You'll be safe there while I finish what I started." Rebecca stared at him. "You want us to hide in Montana while you fight a criminal organization by yourself? It's the only way to keep you safe." "James, that's insane. You can't take on corrupt FBI agents and politicians and drug smugglers all by yourself. I have help. Good people who want to see this end as much as I do." "What kind of help?" Before he could answer, his phone started ringing. The caller ID just said, "Urgent." "Foster." His voice was tense. Rebecca couldn't hear the other side of the conversation, but she could see James's face getting paler with every word. "When?" he asked. "How many?" Then, "Are you sure?" He hung up and looked at Rebecca with an expression that made her stomach drop. "James, what is it?" "They found your apartment. They also found Emma's daycare, your old job, and your mother's house in Nevada." "My mother?" Rebecca felt sick. "James, I haven't talked to my mother in 2 years, but if they hurt her..." She's fine. My people got to her first. She's somewhere safe now. Your people? How many people work for you? Enough. Rebecca, there's something else. Something I should have told you from the beginning. The way he said it made her scared to ask, but she had to know. What? The reason they're so desperate to stop me isn't just about the money laundering. It's about what I found when I was investigating my own company. What did you find? James walked over to a safe hidden behind a painting and pulled out a thick folder. When he opened it, Rebecca saw photos, documents, bank records. I found proof that this operation has been going on for 10 years. Not just through my company, but through dozens of companies across the country. Rebecca, we're not talking about a few corrupt officials. We're talking about a network that reaches into every level of government. How big? Big enough that exposing it will bring down senators, federal judges, maybe even people in the cabinet. Rebecca looked at the documents, trying to process what he was telling her. James, if this is true, if you really have proof of something this big, then I'm not the only one who's going to die if they catch me. Anyone who's seen this evidence, anyone who knows what I know, becomes a target. Including me. Including you. Emma's voice broke through their conversation. Mama, I'm hungry. And I'm tired of looking out windows. Rebecca looked at her daughter, this perfect little girl who just wanted chicken nuggets and cartoons and bedtime stories. Emma had no idea that her life had just changed forever. James, Rebecca said quietly, if we go to Montana, if we hide while you do this, what happens to us afterwards? When it's over? If it goes the way I hope, you'll be able to go back to your normal life. Emma will be safe. You'll both be free. And if it doesn't go the way you hope? James didn't answer right away. When he finally spoke, his voice was so quiet she almost couldn't hear him. If it doesn't go the way I hope, then none of us will be alive to worry about it. Rebecca closed her eyes, trying to think clearly despite the fear that was making it hard to breathe. 6 hours ago, she'd been a single mom worried about paying rent. Now she was apparently a target for assassination because she'd helped the wrong person at the wrong time. But when she opened her eyes and looked at James, she realized something that surprised her. She wasn't sorry she'd helped him. Even knowing what it had cost her, even knowing what it might still cost her, she wasn't sorry. Because for the first time in her life, she was part of something bigger than just surviving. She was part of something that mattered. Okay, she said. Okay, what? Okay, we'll go to Montana. We'll hide while you save the world or die trying. But James? Yeah. When this is over, if we're all still alive, I want you to teach me how to fight back. I'm tired of being someone who just hides while other people make the hard choices. James looked at her like she just said something that changed everything. Rebecca, you're not hiding. You're protecting Emma while I do what needs to be done. That takes more courage than anything I'm about to do. Maybe. But I want to learn anyway. Emma appeared beside them, rubbing her eyes. Are we going on another adventure? The biggest adventure yet, baby, Rebecca said, pulling her daughter close. We're going to the mountains. Will there be bears? Rebecca looked at James, who was smiling despite everything they just talked about. Probably, he said. But don't worry. Your mama's braver than any bear. Have you ever discovered that helping someone pulled you into something much bigger than you expected? Sometimes doing the right thing means accepting consequences you never saw coming. Share in the comments about a time when a small act of kindness changed your entire life. The cabin in Montana was supposed to be safe. Hidden in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by trees and mountains and nothing but silence. Rebecca should have known that nowhere was safe anymore. She woke up to Emma shaking her shoulder at 3 in the morning. Mama, there are lights outside. Lots of lights. Rebecca's heart stopped. She crawled to the window and looked out through the curtains. Car headlights. At least 6 of them, parked in a circle around the cabin. They'd been found. Her phone was buzzing with texts, but not from James. He'd been gone for 2 days, meeting with his FBI contact in Denver. The messages were from numbers she didn't recognize. Come outside. We just want to talk. We have the place surrounded. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. You have something that belongs to us. Give it back and nobody gets hurt. But Rebecca didn't have anything that belonged to them. James hadn't given her any documents, any evidence, any proof of anything. He'd been careful to keep her out of it. So why were they here? Emma was crying now, scared by the lights and the tension radiating from her mother. Rebecca picked her up and carried her to the back bedroom, as far from the windows as possible. It's okay, baby. We're just going to play a hiding game. I don't like this game, Mama. I know, sweetheart. But we have to be very quiet, okay? Rebecca's phone rang. A known number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello. Rebecca Patterson? Who is this? This is Agent Sarah Mitchell with the FBI. I'm calling about James Foster. Relief flooded through her. The FBI. Real FBI, not the corrupt ones James had been worried about. Thank God. Agent Mitchell, there are people surrounding the cabin. I think they're here to hurt us. Miss Patterson, I need you to listen to me very carefully. James Foster is not who you think he is. The world went cold around her. What do you mean? James Foster is wanted in connection with money laundering, human trafficking, and the murder of 3 federal agents. The men outside your cabin are law enforcement officers trying to bring you in safely. That's not true. James is trying to stop the trafficking. He has evidence. Ms. Patterson, James Foster has been feeding you lies. He's the head of the criminal organization we've been investigating for 2 years. Rebecca felt like she was falling. No, that's not possible. The hotel incident where you first met him? That was staged. Those weren't attackers. They were undercover agents trying to arrest him. You interfered with the federal operation. You're lying. I wish I was. Miss Patterson, Foster has been using you. He needed someone to help him move evidence, someone who would look innocent if anyone started asking questions. He didn't give me any evidence. Check Emma's backpack. Rebecca's blood turned to ice. What? Check her backpack, Miss Patterson. The one Foster bought her right before you left for Montana. With shaking hands, Rebecca went to where Emma's pink backpack was sitting by the door. The backpack James had given Emma as a going-away present. The backpack Emma had been carrying everywhere for the past 3 days. Inside the front pocket, sewn into the lining, was a small device Rebecca didn't recognize. What is this? She whispered into the phone. It's a hard drive containing financial records that prove Foster's involvement in trafficking operations across 12 states. He's been using you and your daughter as mules without your knowledge. Rebecca sank to the floor. The man she'd started to love, the man she'd trusted with their lives, had been lying about everything. Miss Patterson, I need you to come outside with Emma. My agents will make sure you're both safe. How do I know you're really FBI? How do I know this isn't another lie? Because if I was working for Foster, you'd already be dead. The truth of that hit her like a punch to the chest. Ms. Patterson, Foster is dangerous. More dangerous than you can imagine. He's killed people who got in his way, including a woman and her child who found out too much about his operation. Emma was tugging on her sleeve. Mama, why are you crying? Rebecca wiped her face, trying to think clearly through the panic and heartbreak. Everything James had told her was a lie. The corruption story, the evidence against government officials, even the way they'd met. All of it carefully planned to manipulate her into helping him. But why her? Why Emma? Agent Mitchell, why did he pick us? We're nobody special. Because you're a single mother with no family connections and financial problems. Because you were vulnerable and kind and exactly the type of person who would help someone in trouble without asking too many questions. And Emma? Children make the best cover. No one suspects a man traveling with a woman and child of being a criminal. Rebecca looked at Emma, her beautiful innocent daughter who had no idea she'd been carrying evidence of murder and human trafficking in her favorite backpack. "Miss Patterson, I need you to bring Emma outside now. Foster is on his way back, and when he gets here, he's going to realize you know the truth. What will happen to us? If you cooperate, if you testify about what Foster told you and what you've seen, we can put you both in witness protection. You'll be safe. And if I don't cooperate?" Agent Mitchell was quiet for a moment. "Then Foster will kill you both to tie up loose ends, and we won't be able to stop him." Rebecca closed her eyes, feeling everything she thought she knew crumbling around her. The man who'd made her feel safe had put her daughter in danger. The man who'd claimed to love them had been using them as pawns in a game she didn't understand. "Miss Patterson, I can see movement on the access road. Foster's coming back. You need to decide right now." Rebecca looked at Emma, who was watching her with those trusting brown eyes. "Mama, are we still playing the hiding game?" "No, baby. The game is over." Rebecca picked up Emma and walked toward the front door, her heart breaking with every step. She'd thought she was protecting her daughter by running with James. Instead, she'd walked them both into a trap. As she reached for the door handle, she heard the sound of motorcycles getting closer. James, coming back to the woman who'd trusted him completely and the child he'd put in mortal danger. Rebecca opened the door and stepped out into the circle of lights, carrying Emma toward the people who claimed to be law enforcement, away from the man who'd promised to keep them safe while planning to destroy them. But as the agents moved toward them with guns drawn, Rebecca realized something that made her blood freeze. She'd been so focused on whether James was lying that she hadn't considered another possibility. What if everyone was lying? Have you ever discovered that someone you trusted completely had been manipulating you? Sometimes the people who seem like our saviors are actually our greatest threat. Share in the comments about a time when you realized someone's love was really a lie. The agents moving toward Rebecca weren't walking like law enforcement. They were walking like hunters who'd cornered their prey. Something was wrong. Rebecca stopped in the middle of the yard, Emma heavy in her arms, and really looked at the people surrounding them. Their gear was wrong. Too new, too expensive. Their movements were too coordinated, like military instead of FBI. And none of them had called out to identify themselves. "Mama, I'm scared," Emma whispered. "I know, baby. Hold on tight." Rebecca's phone was still connected to Agent Mitchell. "Where are your badges?" she called out to the approaching men. "Ms. Patterson, just keep walking toward us," came Mitchell's voice through the phone. But the men in front of her weren't talking. They were just getting closer, weapons drawn, faces hidden behind tactical masks. This wasn't a rescue. This was an execution. The sound of motorcycles was getting louder now. James, riding straight into what was either a trap for him or a trap for all of them. Rebecca made a choice that probably saved their lives. Instead of walking toward the fake agents, she ran toward the sound of the motorcycles. "James," she screamed into the darkness. "It's a trap." Gunshots erupted behind her as she ran, carrying Emma through the trees. The agents were shooting, but not at her. They were shooting at something else. Someone else. James appeared through the trees on his motorcycle, and Rebecca saw something that made everything click into place. He wasn't alone. There were 5 motorcycles, all carrying people in FBI tactical gear. Real FBI gear, with proper identification visible even in the darkness. The people surrounding the cabin weren't law enforcement. They were the criminals James had been trying to expose. "Rebecca!" James jumped off his bike and ran toward them. "Are you hurt?" "I thought you were lying," she sobbed. "I thought you were the criminal. Someone called you, didn't they? Someone claiming to be FBI. Agent Mitchell. She said you were the head of the trafficking ring." James's face went dark. "Sarah Mitchell died 3 weeks ago. They've been using her identity to manipulate witnesses." The real FBI agents were moving through the trees now, surrounding the fake ones. Rebecca could hear shouting, commands to drop weapons, the sounds of people being arrested. "James, they made me think you'd been using us." They said you put evidence in Emma's backpack. What evidence? Rebecca pulled out the device she'd found sewn into Emma's backpack. James took one look at it and his face went white. That's not evidence. That's a tracking device. What? They've been following us this entire time. Rebecca, they didn't plant that device. Someone else did. Who? Before James could answer, one of the real FBI agents approached them. A woman with graying hair and kind eyes, wearing proper identification. Ms. Patterson? I'm Agent Rebecca Torres, FBI. Are you and your daughter injured? Okay, but I don't understand what's happening. We've been trying to catch these people for months. They've been intercepting communications, impersonating federal agents, eliminating witnesses. Mr. Foster's been working with us as an undercover asset. Rebecca stared at James. Undercover asset? I couldn't tell you, he said quietly. The operation was too sensitive. If you'd known I was working with the FBI, I would have acted differently. I might have gotten us all killed. Agent Torres nodded. These people are extremely dangerous. They've been using sophisticated surveillance and communication intercepts to stay ahead of law enforcement. But tonight we got them. All of them. The local cell, yes. But Miss Patterson, there's something you need to know about that tracking device. Rebecca looked down at the small device in her hand. What about it? It's not just a tracker. It's also a listening device. And based on the data we're pulling from it, it was placed in your daughter's backpack 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago? But we only met James a few days ago. James and Agent Torres exchanged a look. Rebecca, James said gently, they've been watching you for much longer than you realize. Watching me? Why? Agent Torres pulled out a tablet and showed Rebecca a file with her photo on it. Because 6 months ago, you witnessed something at the hotel where you worked. Something you probably didn't even realize was significant. Rebecca tried to think. I don't remember seeing anything unusual. A meeting between 2 men in the penthouse suite. You were cleaning the room next door. You probably heard voices but didn't think anything of it. Suddenly, Rebecca remembered. The night she'd been working late, cleaning the executive suites. She'd heard loud voices from the penthouse, angry voices, but she'd just turned up her music and kept working. That meeting was between a federal judge and a known trafficker, Agent Torres explained. You were the only witness to their connection. They've been trying to eliminate you ever since. Rebecca felt sick. So everything that happened, me getting fired, the attacks on James, all of it was them trying to get close enough to kill you while making it look like an accident. But why the elaborate plan? Why not just? Because you're not their only target. There are 12 other witnesses they need to eliminate. They were planning to use you to draw out Mr. Foster, kill you both, and blame it on a domestic dispute gone wrong. Emma stirred in Rebecca's arms. Mama, are the bad people gone now? Rebecca looked at Agent Torres, who nodded. Yes, baby. The bad people are gone. James stepped closer. Rebecca, I need to tell you something else. She looked at him, this man she'd thought was lying to her, this man who'd actually been risking his life to protect her without her even knowing it. What? When I said I loved you and Emma, when I said I'd do anything to keep you safe, that wasn't part of the undercover operation. What do you mean? I mean, Agent Torres and her team have been trying to get me to step back from this case for weeks. They said I was getting too emotionally involved, that my feelings for you were compromising the operation. Agent Torres smiled slightly. He refused to listen. Said he'd rather blow the entire operation than let anything happen to you too. Rebecca stared at James. You risked an FBI operation for us? I risked everything for you. Because somewhere between that first day at the hotel and tonight, you and Emma stopped being an assignment and started being my family. Emma looked up at James sleepily. Are you going to be my new daddy? James looked at Rebecca, and she saw everything in his eyes. Love, hope, fear, and a question he was afraid to ask. That depends on your mama, he said softly. Rebecca thought about everything they'd been through. The lies she'd believed, the truth she'd almost missed, the way he'd protected them even when she'd thought he was the enemy. "Emma," she said, "what do you think? Should James be your new daddy?" Emma grinned. "Only if he promises to read me bedtime stories and not go away anymore." James knelt down so he was eye level with Emma. "I promise I'll read you stories every night for the rest of your life. And I promise I'll never go away unless you and your mama want me to." "I don't want you to go away," Emma said seriously. "You make mama happy." Rebecca felt tears running down her face as she realized that despite everything they'd been through, despite all the danger and confusion and fear, they were finally safe. They were finally home. Have you ever had someone fight for you even when you didn't know they were fighting? Sometimes the people who love us most are protecting us in ways we never see. Share in the comments about discovering that someone cared about you more than you realized. The courtroom was packed with reporters, FBI agents, and families of trafficking victims. Rebecca sat in the witness stand, her hands shaking as she looked out at the sea of faces staring back at her. Emma was in the front row with James, coloring in a book and completely unaware that her mama's testimony was about to put some very dangerous people in prison for the rest of their lives. "Ms. Patterson," the prosecutor said gently, "can you tell the court what you witnessed on the night of March 15th at the Grand Hotel?" Rebecca had told this story a dozen times to FBI agents and lawyers, but telling it in court felt different. More final. More real. "I was cleaning the rooms on the executive floor. It was late, around 11 at night. I heard voices coming from the penthouse suite." "What kind of voices?" "Angry voices. Men arguing about money and shipments and what would happen if someone talked." "Could you identify the voices?" Rebecca looked across the courtroom at the defendant's table. Judge William Morrison sat there in an orange jumpsuit, the same man whose voice she'd heard that night talking about buying children like they were merchandise. One of them was Judge Morrison. A murmur went through the courtroom. Judge Morrison had been a respected federal judge for 15 years before his arrest. Now he was facing life in prison for his role in the trafficking network. "Ms. Patterson, what happened next?" "I tried to leave quietly, but I knocked over a cleaning cart. The voices stopped, and I heard footsteps coming toward the door. I hid in the supply closet until they left." "Did you see who Judge Morrison was meeting with?" "Yes." "A man I later learned was Vincent Torres, the head of the trafficking organization." Vincent Torres wasn't in the courtroom. He'd been found dead in his cell 3 weeks after his arrest, an apparent suicide that nobody believed was actually suicide. "Ms. Patterson, did anyone approach you about what you'd witnessed that night?" "Not at first. But about a week later, I started getting strange phone calls. People asking about my work schedule, my daughter's daycare, where we lived." "Did these calls frighten you?" Rebecca looked at Emma, who was now showing James her coloring, both of them smiling. "Yes. But I didn't understand what they meant until much later." The prosecutor walked her through the rest of the story. The staged attack on James at the hotel, her rescue and subsequent job loss, the fake FBI agents at the cabin, all of it carefully planned to eliminate the witness who could connect a federal judge to a trafficking ring. "Ms. Patterson, how has this experience changed your life?" Rebecca thought about how to answer that. 6 months ago, she'd been a struggling single mother working 2 jobs just to keep a roof over Emma's head. Now she was testifying in federal court against people who'd tried to kill her. But more than that, she'd found love in the most unexpected place. "It's taught me that sometimes the right thing to do is also the scariest thing to do. But you do it anyway because that's how you protect the people you love." "Thank you, Ms. Patterson." No further questions. The defense attorney's cross-examination was brutal. He tried to paint Rebecca as an opportunistic woman who'd fabricated her testimony to get money from James Foster. He questioned her memory, her motives, and her character. But Rebecca had learned something important over the past 6 months. She'd learned that the truth was stronger than lies, and that speaking up for what was right was worth any amount of discomfort. "Sir," she said to the defense attorney during one particularly nasty line of questioning. "I lost my job, my apartment, and almost lost my daughter because I witnessed your client planning to buy and sell children. If I was making this up for money, don't you think I would have come up with a story that didn't destroy my entire life?" When Rebecca finally stepped down from the witness stand, she felt lighter than she had in months. It was over. She'd told the truth, and now whatever happened was out of her hands. James was waiting for her in the hallway outside the courtroom, Emma in his arms. "How do you feel?" he asked. "Tired. Relieved. Ready to go home." Funny how that word had changed meaning over the past few months. Home wasn't their old apartment or even the safe house in Montana. Home was wherever the three of them were together. "Mama, did you tell the judge about the bad people?" Emma asked. "I did, baby. And now the bad people are going to jail so they can't hurt any more kids." "But can we get ice cream now?" James laughed. "I think ice cream sounds perfect." As they walked out of the courthouse together, Agent Torres caught up with them. "Rebecca, I wanted to let you know that the jury reached a verdict. Guilty on all counts for Morrison and the other defendants. They're looking at life sentences." Rebecca felt a weight lift from her shoulders that she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. What about the other witnesses? The other families they were targeting? "All safe. Your testimony was the key that broke the whole case open. Because of your courage, 12 families are alive today instead of being victims." Emma tugged on Rebecca's hand. "Mama, can we go get ice cream now? And can James come with us every day forever?" Rebecca looked at James, this man who'd risked everything to protect her and Emma, who'd shown her that love could be both fierce and gentle at the same time. "Every day forever sounds perfect," she said. 3 weeks later, Rebecca walked down the aisle of a small church wearing a simple white dress and carrying a bouquet of daisies. Emma walked in front of her, scattering flower petals and grinning at everyone like she was the star of the show. James waited at the altar, looking nervous and happy and like he couldn't believe this was really happening. The ceremony was small. Just Agent Torres and a few other FBI colleagues who'd become friends, the pastor, and a handful of other people whose lives had been touched by their story. When the pastor asked if anyone objected to the marriage, Emma raised her hand. "I object," she said loudly. The whole church held its breath. "I object to waiting any longer. I want James to be my daddy right now." The laughter that filled the church was warm and joyful and full of love. When James and Rebecca kissed at the end of the ceremony, Emma cheered and threw more flower petals in the air. "Do I have a daddy now?" she asked as they walked back down the aisle together. "You've had a daddy for months," James said, picking her up and spinning her around. "Now it's just official." That night, as they put Emma to bed in their new house, a normal house, not a safe house, with a yard and neighbors and everything, she asked the question that had become part of their bedtime routine. "Tell me the story about how our family started." Rebecca settled beside Emma on the bed while James sat in the chair nearby. "Well," Rebecca began, "it started with a little girl whose mama was brave enough to help someone who needed help, even when it was scary. And then what happened? Then the mama and the daddy fell in love, and they realized that the best families aren't the ones you're born into, but the ones you choose. And we all chose each other?" "We all chose each other," James confirmed. "And we're going to keep choosing each other every single day." Emma smiled sleepily. "I like our story. It has a happy ending." Rebecca looked around their bedroom, at Emma's drawings on the walls, at James reading quietly in the corner, at the life they'd built together from nothing but courage and love, and realized Emma was right. It did have a happy ending. But more than that, it had a beginning. A real beginning, where 3 people who'd found each other against impossible odds were finally free to be a family. Sometimes the scariest moments of our lives lead to the most beautiful endings. Have you ever found that helping someone changed your whole world? Share in the comments about unexpected love stories and the courage it takes to trust again. 2 years later, Rebecca woke up to the smell of pancakes and the sound of Emma giggling in the kitchen. Saturday mornings had become her favorite part of the week, not because she didn't have to work, but because she got to watch James try to make breakfast while Emma helped by getting flour on everything. "Mama," Emma called from downstairs. "Daddy burned the pancakes again." "I didn't burn them," James called back. "They're just extra crispy." Rebecca smiled as she got dressed. Some things never changed. James could run a billion-dollar company, but he still couldn't make pancakes without setting off the smoke alarm. She found them in the kitchen, both covered in flour, laughing at what looked like the remains of breakfast scattered across every available surface. "How did you get flour on the ceiling?" Rebecca asked. "That's classified information," James said, kissing her cheek. "Emma did it," Emma announced proudly. "I threw it really high." "Why did you throw flour?" "Because Daddy said the pancakes needed to be fluffy, so I thought I'd make the whole kitchen fluffy too." Rebecca looked around at their beautiful disaster of a kitchen and felt her heart swell with happiness. This was what love looked like. Not perfect moments, but perfectly imperfect ones where your family made messes and laughed about them together. "Well, since breakfast is apparently decorative now, how about we go out to eat?" Emma cheered. James looked relieved. "But first," Rebecca said, "we need to talk about something." Emma's face got serious. "Are we in trouble?" "No, baby. But remember how we talked about how families sometimes grow?" Emma nodded solemnly. "Well, our family is about to grow." James looked at Rebecca with confusion, then understanding, then joy so bright it could have powered the whole house. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" Rebecca pulled out the pregnancy test she'd taken that morning and showed it to him. Emma looked at the little plastic stick. "What is it?" "It's something that tells us you're going to be a big sister," Rebecca said. Emma's eyes went wide. "Really? I'm getting a baby?" "In about 7 months." Emma jumped up and down, then stopped suddenly. "Will you still love me when the baby comes?" James knelt down so he was eye level with her. "Emma, listen to me. Having a baby brother or sister doesn't mean we love you less. It means our family gets bigger, so there's more love for everyone. Like when you married Mama and I got a daddy, but Mama didn't stop being my mama?" "Exactly like that." Emma thought about this for a moment, then nodded decisively. "I'll be the best big sister ever. I'll teach the baby how to color and how to throw flour and how to make Daddy laugh when he's grumpy." Rebecca felt tears in her eyes. 2 years ago, she'd been terrified about giving Emma a stable life. Now Emma was talking about being a big sister like it was the most natural thing in the world. "There's something else," James said, pulling out an envelope. "I got a call yesterday from the Children's Defense Fund. They want to give you an award." "An award for what?" "For your work with trafficking victims. Rebecca, in the past 2 years, you've helped 17 families rebuild their lives after being rescued. You've testified in 6 federal cases. You've saved lives." Rebecca looked at the envelope. Inside was an invitation to a ceremony in Washington, D.C., where she'd be honored as one of the year's outstanding advocates for children's rights. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," James said seriously. "You did what Rebecca would do. Not everyone has the courage to fight for strangers. Not everyone would risk their safety to protect kids they'd never met." "Mama's a hero," Emma said matter-of-factly. "She saved me and Daddy and all those other people too. I'm not a hero, baby. I'm just a mama who wants all kids to be safe." "That's exactly what makes you a hero," James said. That afternoon, they drove to the cemetery where James's parents were buried. It had become another Saturday tradition, bringing flowers and telling them about their week. Emma ran ahead to put fresh daisies on the headstones while James and Rebecca walked slowly behind her. "Do you think they would have liked me?" Rebecca asked. It was a question she'd asked before, but James always answered it like it was the first time. "They would have loved you. And they would have been so proud of the man you've helped me become." Rebecca leaned against him as they watched Emma arranging flowers with the serious concentration she brought to everything important. "James?" "Yeah. Do you ever think about what would have happened if I hadn't helped you that day at the hotel? Every day. And I think about how many times people probably walked past someone who needed help and decided it wasn't their problem. I think about how easy it would have been for you to just keep cleaning and pretend you didn't see what was happening. But I couldn't do that. I know. That's what I fell in love with first. Not your kindness, but your inability to walk away from someone who needed help, even when it cost you everything. Emma came running back to them. I told Grandma and Grandpa about the baby. I think they're excited. What makes you think that? Rebecca asked. The wind blew right when I told them, like they were saying congratulations. As they drove home, Emma fell asleep in the back seat, worn out from her busy morning. Rebecca watched the familiar streets go by, thinking about how different her life was now from what she'd ever imagined it could be. She wasn't just a survivor anymore. She was a wife, a mother, an advocate, and soon she'd be a mother of two. She had a husband who loved her not despite her past but because of how it had shaped her into someone who fought for others. Rebecca, James said quietly, so he wouldn't wake Emma. What? Thank you. For what? For saving my life. Not just that day at the hotel, but every day since. For showing me what it means to have a family worth protecting. You saved my life too. You gave me and Emma a future I never thought we could have. We saved each other. That night, after Emma was asleep, Rebecca and James sat on their back porch looking at the stars. The house was quiet, the dishes were done, and tomorrow would bring its own challenges and joys. Do you think the baby will be as much trouble as Emma? James asked. I hope so. Trouble keeps life interesting. In that case, we're going to have a very interesting life. Rebecca leaned back against his chest, feeling the warmth of his arms around her and the gentle flutter of the baby growing inside her. James? I love our interesting life. Even the parts where I burn breakfast and Emma redecorates the kitchen with flour? Especially those parts. As they sat there in the comfortable darkness, surrounded by the life they'd built together from nothing but courage and love, Rebecca realized something that filled her with perfect contentment. This wasn't just a happy ending. This was a happy beginning. A beginning that would last for the rest of their lives, filled with burned pancakes and flour fights and children who would grow up knowing that love was worth fighting for. Sometimes the best families are the ones that choose each other. Sometimes the greatest love stories start with the smallest acts of kindness. And sometimes, when you're brave enough to help someone who needs it, you end up saving yourself too. The best love stories aren't about perfection, they're about people who choose to build something beautiful together, mess by mess, day by day. What moment in your life taught you that family is about choice, not just blood? Share in the comments about the families we create and the love that grows when we're brave enough to help each other.
Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one.